Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon SoulSilver. In the last part, we took care of some legendary hunting after first accessing Mount Silver, and now we're gonna do a lot more side stuff before we even think about approaching the end of the game again. I see, it's the Ecruteak Gym Badge. The badge alone will not do any good, but I can let you through. Please, do go on. Now we're back in Ecruteak because several parts ago in Pewter City, we got the Rainbow Wing, and if you're playing Hard Gold, you would get the Silver Wing there. And that allows us to go get the opposite version's box art legendary. I should also note, in Crystal, this is where your final encounter with Suicune was? I'm not exactly sure why they moved it, barring maybe them wanting you to just do more Suicune plot along the way with the Kanto stuff. Kinda weird, but ultimately harmless, I guess, is what it comes down to. Also, there's a lot of mushrooms around here that are basically pointless. But at least the main thing is here. Welcome to the Bell Tower. This was called the Tin Tower, if memory serves, in the original game. This is the equivalent to the Whirl Islands to people playing Hard Gold. You're doing this in story at that point where we did that. The thing you have. You have done it. Please, come through. I ultimately prefer this dungeon to the Whirl Islands because it actually feels more like a puzzle area rather than just another cave for you to go through with multiple entrances. The main gimmick here is that you're going through a lot of one-way pathways just trying to find your way to the items or to the top floor of the area. We got about, I want to say like 9 floors? 10 floors counting the peak? So you're going to be going back and forth a lot probably. Thankfully, there's not many important Pokemon to catch here, barring what's going to be at the peak of the tower. The main things you're finding around here, random battle-wise, are Rattatas and Ghastlies. And even then, Ghastlies are only going to be there at night. If you're using, I guess, Hoenn or Sinnoh sound, you can find, like, Chattots around here, I think. But that's the only really kind of hard one to find out of all those, because, like, Meditites, Zigzagoons, and Spindas are pretty easy to find in all of other places. This is a dungeon that I do think got a lot easier in Heart Gold and SoulSilver, though, if only because one of the most minor but helpful mechanic changes to Heart Gold and SoulSilver is the screen ratio. The game is a lot more zoomed out, so you can see more of the area around you, especially because of the slight angle the camera's at, than you could in the original game. Because the Game Boy Color screen, oh boy, that thing was tiny. In fact, you know what? Now I'm curious. Game Boy Color screen size. 160, but it was 144p. Oh my god. Whereas DS screen size looks like it's about 256 by 192, so better aspect ratio at the least. And they use those extra pixels well, overall. Also, I really appreciate this place for having a unique theme worth the damn. In fact, in general, I think the songs you hear first in Heart Gold are better than the ones you hear in SoulSilver. For instance, I like the Legendary at the end of the Bell Towers theme much more than Lugia's theme, and the Lugia's theme is still really good. And I think a lot of it has to come down to it at least has a theming to it. Because, like, the Whirl Islands song, I think, is just the cave song now that I think about it, and Lugia's theme is underwater monstrosity that is gigantic kind of song. Whereas because Ecruteak itself is very based in Japanese culture, the music is as well, and that gives it a much more unique feeling to everything else in the game. That's another thing, I guess, that I like about what starts happening, and particularly, I'd say maybe Gen 4 onwards in the series. Regionally, they just do better at having a theme across the entire area. Like, for a lot of Johto, it's more or less the same as Kanto aesthetically, but then you get, like, Ecruteak and parts of Mahogany that feel a little bit different. Whereas, like, Gen 4 Beyond, it all has that, like, I don't want to say European feel, but definitely that more gothic feeling to it. Gen 5 especially runs that home. Gen 7 has the whole culture to it with how Alola is set up, and they do a good job of exposing you to that throughout the game. Gen 6's France is pretty weak, though, I'll give them that. And we'll see how Gen 9 is. Gen 8's culture was lacking at times. There were some areas I liked. If anything, I did like how varied the towns were in that game, while still feeling oddly unified. Do I wish the towns were bigger, though? Yes. I do kind of hope, in general, because I forget if they show a good case of that in the Gen 9 trailers we've gotten recently. I hope that towns are bigger than, like, 3 houses, because that's genuinely been one of my favorite things they started doing in, like, technically they started doing that in Gen 1 with at least Saffron and Celadon. But I prefer the towns to have scale to them, essentially. Or at least the cities. Like, I love I love Castelia City in Gen 5. I think it's Lumios in the center of Gen 6, even though I don't like the layout of that one too much. I like it when Pokemon towns aren't like old Final Fantasy towns, essentially. Oh, also, the Bell Tower is partially a teleport maze in its last few floors. Thankfully, the teleport routes are pretty straightforward. There's not a bunch of, like, Saffron Gym-esque teleports to it, I guess is the way I want to phrase it, where you got too many options. At most, you're given 2 at a time, and their routes converge at a pretty good pace. Make sure you take your time when you're on these one-way leaps, by the way, because while it doesn't take long to backtrack, if you accidentally miss that there's one below you, you'll probably just curse yourself out a little bit. Because the ones that go left, right, and upwards are pretty easy to see, but when they're going downwards, they're against the camera in such a way that they're kind of hard to tell they're there, especially if you're, like, only on the panel a little bit. Gotta be a little careful. In a way, though, it is fascinating looking back at the history for Heart Gold and SoulSilver and Gold and Silver in particular. And just looking back and remembering that more or less every Pokemon game has, like, that bias for which version people prefer. Usually it's the first name bias, so, like, I think Sword sold better than Shield, Sun sold better than Moon, usually, things like that, so Gold sold better than Crystal. But I think it also has to do a little bit with the Olympic ranking system in general with this, where Gold's often considered better than Silver in a lot of ways, so people went for that more often than not. Makes me wonder if that's why after Black and White 2, they started going in other directions besides colors for a while. Because the next time we got active colors used for the name is Scarlet and Violet, and that's still yet to release at the time of recording, at least. So maybe that's something to do with it. I do wish Pokemon games actively got postmortems a bit more often, where the developers talked about troubles they had and stuff. It really feels like gaming in general only really started talking about that a lot more openly the last decade, barring the release of, like, old game design documents. Like, I think the original Diablo's game design document was released in some time in the last 5-6 years, something like that. The only reason I know some companies don't do that is they might use ideas from that later down the road. Like, I know we've seen evidence that, like, Nintendo in particular will reuse ideas that they didn't use in earlier games decades down the line, even. Welcome to the Peak. Yes, this is where we welcome Ho-Oh. When the dance we practiced for many days becomes one with the sound of the clear bell we entrusted to you, then Ho-Oh shall come down from the great arc of the sky once again. That is indeed Ho-Oh, the guardian of the sky around here. From ancient times. So many have tried and tried, only to fail. Kylie, your heart and the clear bell in harmony have finally made it appear. Kylie, don't you see? Ho-Oh must have been waiting for someone like you all this time. Wouldn't you agree? Save on up. It's time for another battle. God, Ho-Oh's theme is so much better than Lugia's, it's not even funny. Heart Gold Legendary drop. This is Ho-Oh, Fire Flying type, so it is weak against Rock, Water, and Electric, immune to Ground. I like Lugia. Ho-Oh's also really good. High physical attack, high special attack, good special defense as well. The biggest weakness it has is its speed and defense, but again, being a legendary, it's still going to be better than most Pokemon. The physical attack stat being its highest was a little bit of a weakness prior to Generation 4, but to help it use that stat even more, they changed its signature attack to specifically be a physical fire move. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. The special move of Ho-Oh is Sacred Fire. It is a high power, low PP, decent accuracy physical fire move that has a 1 in 2 chance of burning the target, meaning it is overall pretty good. Since it takes a good advantage of its stat. The biggest weakness with Ho-Oh comparatively is there's definitely more Pokemon that can take advantage of its weaknesses than there are for Lugia, because Psychic Flying is a little harder to work around in some regards, a little bit, at least prior to Dark-type's intervention. But nowadays, I'd say they're pretty much on parity. It's more or less just your preference of which one you think is a cooler looking design, or which one you think is more useful. I'm usually leaning more towards Ho-Oh, but I really do like Lugia use-wise as well, but again, because of my own rules, I don't really like to use legendaries unless I absolutely have to. Now, I should note, you may have noticed we very not so cleverly edited in the cutscene from when you first meet Ho-Oh there in Heart Gold. I do want to apologize for one thing. How that footage looked. That was the first footage I recorded for this LP, even before part 1. So I didn't have the settings right yet, so it looks a little blurrier than the rest of it, just like how parts 1, 2, and I think 3 did. So, sorry for that. I don't want to say ahead of time, but that's the last we'll see of that footage. But that's not the last time we'll see that Heart Gold background I had to make, because we'll be using Heart Gold for one other thing down the line. On many playthroughs of various Pokemon games, whenever I get to the title legendary fight, I have just used the Master Ball just to not make it a pain in the ass. There's many reasons you don't want to do that, though, especially prior to Gen 6, when roaming legendaries became a lot less frequent. Nowadays, I'd say it's just safer to use your Ultra Balls, because I think starting in like Gen 5 or 6, they also give the title legendary a slightly higher than usual catch rate for reasons. So they can just kind of help you get it along the way. Definitely have a little bit of a curse about Ho-Oh, though, because I swear Ho-Oh has a grudge against me, maybe because I prefer Lugia, and just makes itself harder to catch in general. Basically, any game Ho-Oh is catchable in through normal means that Lugia is also catchable in. Even if it's just through events, Ho-Oh always takes so much longer, and so many more soft resets. I don't know why, it just does. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad this particular playthrough, but man, that Fire Red LP, when I had to do that event, that was rough. Enough Ultra Balls, enough time, as usual, and any legendary Pokemon will be caught. Let's see what your Pokedex entry's got to say. Ho-Oh, the rainbow Pokemon. A legend says that its body glows in 7 colors. A rainbow is said to form behind it when it flies. Well, that tracks because you were even in the first episode of the anime, which was really confusing to Western players back in the day. But our business in the Bell Tower is concluded, so now it's time for us to very weirdly transition over to the power plant. Why? You know, figured we'd check in on everyone here, see how they're doing now the generator's back up and running. Apparently a surprising amount of Kanto runs on this thing, so it being that easy to disrupt was a little weird. But oh well, at least they're all doing well now. But no, there is a real reason we've come here in particular, because it was an easier transition point than just being in the middle of the last route. Because after you've collected all 8 Kanto gym badges, Zapdos just spawns outside. So the third of the Kanto legendary birds is right here. Yay. Zapdos is easily my favorite out of the original legendary bird trio. Electric flying type, meaning it is weak against rock and ice, immune to ground. High special attack stat, high speed, and a good learn set to back it up. It just feels like it's the best of the three to use in most circumstances. It gets some good learn set basically in every game it's in, especially learning moves like Drill Peck, Thunder, Zap Cannon in later games especially. It's a really good mon. I recommend it a lot. So I do want to, thinking of that, correct something I said a few parts ago. Maybe it was when we were catching Lugia or something. I've said I found it weird that Lugia is like the only case they've introduced a Trio Master for a set of legendaries the generation after those legendaries were introduced. I completely forgot about Regigigas in that case. The comments probably already brought it up by this point, but yeah, Regigigas was introduced in Gen 4, while the Regis were introduced in Gen 3. But I think that's the only times that's happened. Although I guess we just technically get another one of the, what are they called? Not the Musketeer Trinity from Gen 5. It's the other one, like with Tornadoes and such. And they added a new form to that one, technically, in Arceus, but I'm not sure if that's a Trio Master in that case. Now, I kind of wish every set of legendaries got its own theme, though. That's just more or less a thing I've thought in every game, though, because them just using either the same legendary theme as everything else, or the main battle theme just feels disappointing. With that said, I guess I do prefer this to what they did in Fire Red and Leaf Green for the Legendary Bird Trio, where they just took the main Pokemon battle theme and pitched it up an octave or three. So it just sounded really shrill and annoying. Didn't like that. Didn't like that at all. I get why they don't want to make every Legendary have its own unique theme, because that would probably be too many, especially with how many Legendaries we have nowadays between by the time Gen 9 comes out, over 1,000 Pokemon. Not counting regional variants. So, but at least like every trio should have its theme, I'd say. Like, give the Kanto Legendary Birds a theme. Ho-Oh and Lugia can share a theme in future games. Reggie theme can be shared, that kind of stuff. Just to make them feel like they stand out from each other a bit more. Zapdos was kind of mean when it came to catching them, by the way, as you can tell. 40 minutes. Ish, about the longest we've seen thus far, probably the first one, I think. A little mean, but oh well. From memory, Zapdos is also one that has a pretty good chance of knocking your team out, because I think they also have Ancient Power around, so be careful. This legendary bird is said to appear only when a thundercloud parts into two halves. How incredibly specific. But that's all 5 of the Gen 1 and 2 birds caught now, so you might wonder what's next. It's time for us to focus on other stuff now that we've seen about 255 total Pokemon. We want to head back to Violet City because at this point, it's about finally time we go explore the Ruins of Alph, which we saw way at the beginning of the LP just about, and I've waited until now, mostly because for SoulSilver players, it's about the only time you can fully first complete it. So we explored the basics of this area before. This is a giant history area where there's archaeologists exploring ruins. I think we talked to the leader in that house several parts back as well. But around the Ruins of Alph are 4 sub-buildings we can enter that have puzzles for us to do. In fact, they each have 2 puzzles. To start, there's the one behind the main altar. Escape. Each one of these want you to use a specific move or item from your bag or move list to open this door. So in this case, escape, you want to use an escape rope. And doing this opens the door and gives you access to 4 Pokeballs, usually containing evolution items in some form or manner, or things like berries. The main reason you want to do these rooms is because if you fall down the hole at the top of them, you get sent to a completely different room than the other place that you would go down in these areas. But when we fall down the hole at the top, we get treated to some very light lore. Engravings. Our clan engraved words in this place. Notably, the script is different in the original games. Our word shall remain here for ages, is what it said back in Crystal. And then you can fall down the hole at the bottom right, and we're sent into the central part of the Ruins of Alph that you can enter by going into the central building, because there's actually 5 buildings there, not counting the house with the archaeologists. But while we're down here, there's not much. There's no Pokemon, there's just some NPCs to talk to. This is a big room, but there's nothing here. It's a little weird. This place has a mystical quality to it, or a historic quality, or an eerie quality, or an ancient quality, or a solemn quality, or a frosty quality. In essence, it feels sort of ethereal. You really like using your thesaurus, I can tell. But now I need to head back to that room. And the way I'm going to structure this part of the LP moving forward is I'm going to do the puzzle that requires using an item or move, grab those items, go back, do the main puzzle, and then do a jump cut to the lore room, essentially, just so I can kind of pace it better. Welcome to this chamber. We're reconstructing ancient Pokemon stone panels. You can rotate stone panel pieces by touching them for a short time. If you touch a piece and slide it, you can move it around. We think we should be able to put them back to where they were. So we get a hint for the Pokemon we need to reconstruct, and we need to move the tiles. This Pokemon hides on the seafloor and watches the shore with eyes on its back. So if you're familiar with Pokemon at all, you can probably very easily tell that we are reconstructing Kabuto here. You drag the pieces around to actually move them, but you need to tap them to rotate them. And when you complete the puzzle, you fall again. I will be jump cutting the lower rooms there because otherwise you just fall right down here again. Hello, you weren't here before. Did you just come down from above? So, he must have solved the stone panel puzzle. That's wonderful. You seem to have some talent with archaeology. I'll give you this unknown report. It records unknown as you capture them. I'm sure it'll come in handy. So you might wonder what's an unknown. We'll get into that in a moment. Just know that every puzzle we do, more of them, will be unleashed because there's now a strange presence here. And as we run around, the NPCs are missing, but there's now random encounters, all against the same type of Pokemon. This is an unknown. Pure Psychic type, so it's weak against Bug, Ghost, and Dark. Immune to Ground, though, because they always have Levitate. Unknown is very unremarkable. It has an okay attack stat for a, I guess, sort of a mythical Pokemon. But they're so weak that it's just not really worth using them. They're more or less just a gimmick Pokemon, because there are 28 different variants of Unknown, each resembling letters from the general Latin alphabets, as well as an exclamation point and a question mark. For instance, we're seeing J here. In order to technically complete this side quest, you need to catch all 28, and each of the stone panel puzzles we do unleash more in this bottom floor of the Ruins of Alph. For instance, doing the one we just did released unknowns A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. I would probably recommend doing these rooms that we're doing in a weird order, though, so that you start with the fewest amount of unknowns and then grow from there. So you'd want to start from the upper left entrance, for instance, and then go to the lower right, then the lower left, then the upper right entrances to these areas. So I got a lot of catching to do. With that said, I am mostly jump cutting out past the catching, as that's just a lot of time that I don't want to actively spend on screen grinding for the individual ones. I was originally just going to reuse the same joke I did back in my Fire Red LP where I would spell a message in my boxes and just kind of scroll past ignoring it. My original plan was to just say send nudes, but A, that meme is well past dead at this point, but also, because I need to catch them all for this side quest anyway, there's no real point. Unless I wanted to catch enough to spell a sentence, but I feel like a single box couldn't contain some of those sentences that use every single letter at least once, you know? Unknown, the symbol Pokemon. Its flat, thin body is always stuck on walls. Its shape appears to have some meaning. Unknown are a very cool concept that I just wish they did more with in general, because well, they're not very useful. They're cool, you know? I like that they have some mysteriousness to them. That even the anime propped up a bit with the third movie about Entei, although it was mostly about the unknown. And I like that they brought them back as sort of a... I don't want to compare them to the Assassin's Creed Feathers, but it's what's coming to mind in Arceus, where they're just across the various maps of that game, hiding in specific places and you get hints for them. I like that kind of system. I kind of hope there's something like that in Scarlet and Violet. For now, let's go do the second chamber. For this, light is our word puzzle. What you need to do for this is use the move Flash from anyone in your party. No specific Pokemon are needed for it, just use Flash. You could theoretically just come in here and open all 4 of these doors and just completely ignore the actual unknown subplot. The main reason I'm doing this is because I don't think I really showed off the Ruins of Alph much in the original LP at all. And there is some interesting things to do here even outside of the unknown stuff. Because although you have to go through a part of Union Cave to get to it, there are Pokemon you can catch here in the Ruins of Alph you can basically find nowhere else besides the Safari Zone. This Pokemon knows no fear, knew no fear, and flew as it pleased through the skies long ago. For this one, we need to make an Aerodactyl. And I should also note, the other very important thing about the Ruins of Alph is that this is where you can find more or less every fossil in the game. If you use Rock Smash on the rocks just around the area, you can find the Helix or Dome fossils, which become Omastar and Kabutops' line in particular, or an Old Amber. Dome Fossil is found in SoulSilver, the Helix is in Hard Gold, Old Amber's in both, which is good because I think Aerodactyl is probably the most usable of those 3. If you want to find any other fossils, I don't think you can. Now that I think about it, it's just those ones. Our clan created Pokemon statues outside, back in Crystal, that instead said, "Thus we shall erect a Pokemon statue outside." Now that we've done that particular entrance, we have unlocked Pokemon R, S, T, U, and V. This ultimately means that by the time you're getting close to this side quest, if you're trying to catch all the unknown, you have about a 1 in 26 chance, or about a 3% something chance of finding the unknown you're looking for. So grinding around in this place can be kind of annoying. There's no real way to guarantee it, you just kind of gotta hope. The last bastion of it is that the last 2 are surprisingly easy to get for radically different reasons. I almost considered for this LP using an Aerodactyl at one point as my flyer, but then I thought about it more, and even though I could get that fossil really early, because you can get those fossils more or less as soon as you get here, you can't awaken those fossils until you reach Pewter City, so you need to have beaten the game, and I wanted to have a full team for Lance, at the least. It's another thing, remnant of me also considering doing a second team for Johto in this playthrough, but ultimately wanting to get my level curve up more. With that, though, our business in the main Ruins of Alph is done for now. The last 2 entrances, as I mentioned a few moments ago, can only be accessed through a specific part of Union Cave. And over there, back on Route 32, something else is waiting for us. Yahoo! It's Friday! I'm Freed Out Friday. Nice to meet you. Here's a poison barb for you. So you might remember, towards the Pokemon League, around part 20 or 19, one of those, we found a house that listed each day of the week and where one of the siblings was. That's Friday, the Frida, the Friday member of those sets of siblings. It was a complete coincidence that I found her at this particular point because I was going to do all of them down the line anyway, but since I'm here, might as well. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 33, we're going to deep dive back into Union Cave to explore more of the Ruins of Alph, and then see what we can do after that. See you guys then.